Okay. Well, it's nice to meet you.
Same, very nice to sit with you here as well.
So to start with, would you like to say your name and where you are?
My name is Waltraud Reiner, and we are speaking to each other from Australia.
Okay.
Melbourne, actually, Melbourne, Australia.
Melbourne, Australia. And is that some kind of hat shaping workshop where you're sitting?
Well,
I'm not sure what that is.
yes, it's always, I never, sometimes I think about where should I sit, but I like this corner. It's a very comfortable chair and the light from the window is really nice. And I forget that I'm surrounded by hat blocks. They are hat blocks. And
At least I did figure out what they were. I just
yeah.
Okay.
You see, they are all hat blocks, and you make hats on those shapes. And I have had them for a collection, a huge collection, collected over many, many years.
Interesting. Okay.
Hmm.
So, thank you for that little piece of information. The first real question for you to get started is, who am I sitting with? Who are you as a person, as a human being? And that can be your passions or your values or whatever you'd like to share about yourself.
Hmm. Oh dear, this is such a complex question, you know, and that big question, who am I? We are asking from the day dot. Wow, okay. Well, at heart, I would say I like to think of myself, I'm a good person. I'm a kind person. I am a complicated person. I complex because I have very different ways of orientating myself in life, which works for me but doesn't necessarily work for others. And to navigate that, I sometimes find challenging because we all live in a social construct, and I do. I have a passion for hats and hat blocks. That was sort of my first trait. I learned what I would call probably, which I've finally learned how to integrate with therapy. And I guess I'm an art therapist without the piece of paper. Internally, it's an integral part of me, of my own survival and growing up throughout life, to be able to tap into the arts and making and using hands, which connects me to heart and soul. And I have learned to find a way to do this for people and to provide space. I'm an educator. I'm a budding therapist. I guess I've been a therapist all my life in different ways, through different endeavors and how I operate. What else? I always thought of myself as an extrovert, and I actually think I'm probably more a socialized extrovert, but I'm really an introvert. I love talking. I love being with people. I love sharing. I love infusing. But at the end of it, I'm empty. It's not. I'm not sort of like. It's not. Not getting filled by it in the moment. Yes, but then I need to retreat and I need to refill. And I do this through my gardening. I do this through meditation. I do this through just sitting and with a cup of coffee and staring into nothingness. And then as I have that space, new ideas already happen. How can I empty myself again? So there's this constant going on stage in a way, and I don't mean on stage telling a story which isn't true, but it's nevertheless, it's sort of a performance. And then I need to retreat into a corner to breathe, to feel, and then I can't help it. The next idea arises. As much there's a longing of not doing so much, but the ideas keep coming. I guess I live in Australia. I'm born Austrian. I'm very aware lately that I am a white woman, which comes with privileges, and oh God, I'm a mother. I'm a wife. I'm a grandmother, a new one, which is just one of those amazing, wonderful things which has happened to me in life. Yeah. What else?
Many hats.
Many hats. Many hats. Yeah.
Okay. Well, what would you say are some of the values that you hold throughout different aspects of your life?
Values. The values, I think, would be for me, I don't know. Sometimes the first thing what comes to mind is family values. It's with the family values of as if we are supposed to have this as a value. And just as you asked me, I sort of went family value, but then I kind of go, is this really my first value? Because if it is family value, that means my extended family, in the little leftovers I have in Austria, and the family from my partner, and the family from the in-laws, and on it goes. Or do I say my family value is my tiny little family I have created here in Australia? And I think the latter is true. This is where I'm placing all my energy, because I have only so much energy. And when things sometimes, family are complicated, or maybe not yours, but mine definitely is, the extended one, I kind of feel like I haven't got the energy to put that into a living and functioning space anymore in the life, in the stage in life where I am at. So my family value is definitely my little family here in Australia. And I probably would do almost anything for them. Not everything, but almost anything, I think. I don't know what I wouldn't do for them, actually. But yes, that's a value. Another value, I think, is to be true to myself, without having that narcissistic need, which I have learned that I very much had, and to acknowledge that my existing in the world has arisen from that narcissistic wound, and putting myself out there, which is slowly closing up as a whole. And having said that, so therefore being true to myself has become very important in a different way, which also is a value to support others to be true to themselves in their go about. That's that value, I think, goes hand in hand. Another value would be an ongoing, I have a love for learning, an ongoing love for learning. prudence, I think, is probably another one of I have hurt and harmed quite a lot around me, I think, by being too direct, because it's a fact. It's the truth. It's Waltraud's truth. Not quite realizing how to reframe or frame something which can be said, doesn't need to be said. And
I had to learn that word. That was not part of my vocabulary.
Right.
Yeah.
And I am still aware of that is a practice. It has become a value, but it's a practice. So it's not something I do automatically. It's I have to remind myself. And in order to do that, I think it helps my intuition and my the training, I guess, as a Gestalt therapist, has probably tuned that reacting to that feeling, which has been with me all my life anyway, or since the age of 7, I guess. There was a pivotal moment where I realized that I had that, but I needed to learn how to harness it and to believe it and act upon it or not act upon it.
It is intuition.
Yes, that feeling, which goes, speak now or shut up. It can go both ways. It does not need to be said, or you can hold that, you can sit with that. This is not yours.
Okay. So maybe it's what happened when you were 7. I'm curious now. But I'm wondering what comes to mind as an event or as a set of circumstances that you would say have really impacted you or shaped you in some way.
That's a question, how events and things.
Yeah.
Well, I guess.
What event or what comes to mind?
Okay, yeah. Well, I guess that would be the biggest one would be when I was 7, 8. I come from a very uneducated working class family in Austria, and we got a television when I was 7, and before that it was very sheltered in the country upbringing, very sheltered, very naive. At the same time, a wonderful way of roaming the country, and the imagination and the resilience, what they brought with it, the training, and also making things from nothing, being very resourceful. And I was sitting on the floor playing with, we had Lego. That was the only toy we really had, Lego. All the homemade things we would nail together ourselves. And my father was watching the news, and we weren't allowed to watch television because there was nothing. There was 2 channels, and it had the news. It started at 6 o'clock at night, and then we had to go to bed anyway. And my father would yell at the television, and I looked up and I saw fighter planes, and he would yell and say something like, "They all should kill each other down there." The second one, I put my head back down again. Then he yelled again, and he yelled, and those bloody blacks. And the image portrayed on the television was the bobbies beating up black community in London. And the third time he yelled at the bloody artists. Fuchs and Hundertwasser, 2 very famous Austrian artists, were demonstrating pouring red paint over their bodies. Made no sense to me whatsoever what I was seeing, but the words, the yelling, and the pictures stuck. And later in life, I could make sense that it was the Six-Day War in Israel. It was the demonstrations for fur, killing of animals in Vienna. And the Vietnam War was going on. Veterans came back, demonstrations in the States, Johnson, England. And that all happened in 1967. And I got up from the floor with so much anger. This body, this little body, was filled with, that's wrong. And I didn't know what was wrong. My father was wrong. And I stood in front of him and I said, when I grow up, I buy a VW bus and I will take anybody, anywhere, wherever they want to go. And I ran out of the house into the forest where this was I had a little spot, which was whatever my fantasy was there to sit there. I was safe. And I cried and I cried and I cried. And I was so upset and I didn't understand why I was so upset. And then this calm came over me. And I sort of had this feeling, at that stage, I didn't hear a voice, but I think there was a voice which said, it's okay. You won't stay in Austria. You will leave. This will not last forever. And this calm overcame me. And I walked home and I walked into the house and my father said, so have you finished being mad? And I went just and went into my room, not affected by this, because I knew I will leave and this will have an end, whatever that this was. My family was terribly loving. My father adored me. So it wasn't that I wasn't hit, I wasn't beaten. I was, without realizing at the time, today we would say we were psychologically, of course, abused in not having any books in the house, of being bullied with jokes, with being told that we are no good, that this is wrong, very little praise, because the praise, they didn't get it either. They were war generation. They had no parents. They had a lot of pain in their lives. And when I was 20, I did leave. I left on the first train, which I knew was because I had free tickets on the train. My father worked for the train, Austrian train company, public transport. And I knew that the train platform 1 left into Germany, France, or Italy, which bordered. And I just decided to take the first train which would leave. And I got on, and that one left for Germany. And I left with $8 in my pocket, a free ticket, and knowing, and I guess in many ways that growing up quite naive, my naivete was useful all my life, because there was a fire burning in me which didn't let me be squashed. And at the same time, I didn't have enough knowledge to keep me back. It kind of went, this is what I want to do. I'm going to find a way to do it. And I did. And I still do. With whatever has to happen in life, I just do it or try. Some things succeed, some things fail.
Interesting. So I'm wondering about other people in your life. Who have you met who has had a significant influence on you?
Well, I guess, again, goes back to my little village. To the age of 14, I I did what everybody had to do. We went to primary school. There was no choice of what school. You just went to your nearest school. No, we don't. The school system in Austria is very good, and the same. It doesn't really matter where you go. So there's no choice of private schools. Private schools are for they exist, but very few, and they would be for people who are expats or who travel or that kind of thing. But otherwise, and I went to primary, then I went to middle school, and in middle school we had English, and there was two parts, one with English, one without English, and you have to be considered smart to be allowed to go in English. And I was apparently, whatever test I had to do at the time, I was considered not smart enough for English. And my mother, bless her heart, felt that I needed to have English, because I think she sort of had the only woman in our family who had a taste that there is something else outside of Austria. And she made it happen through a person who they were feeding throughout the war as a child on their farm, who ended up being a doctor. And in Austria, I guess, like in many places, it's not what you know, is who you know. And that doctor, who had nothing to do with the school, managed to convince the headmaster that I am to go into the English stream. So I went into the English stream for 4 years, and I had 4 years of English. And then after that, I met, at that same period, there was a boy coming back from Afghanistan who lived there, an Austrian family. They lived in Afghanistan all his childhood. They were teaching at the university in Kabul, music, and left Afghanistan when it was not viable anymore for foreigners to be there. And he came back, and he was different. And he was 2 years older than I, and we were traveling on the same bus to the city from the village. And nobody wanted to sit next to him because he looked weird. He had Afghani sandals and Afghani jackets and hats on, and he had this sheep smell about him, and people just thought he was weird. And I was drawn to him. So we became friends, and he went to university in Graz. He studied. I was sent to fashion school, which was a total disaster in one way, because I didn't fit even less into the village, learning about fashion, and into the fashion school I didn't fit because I was such a country pumpkin. So it was very misaligned that, and there was he who started giving me an understanding there is something else out there. We were hanging out at night. He was playing the guitar, and we were drinking schnapps, and we went for night walks at 2 o'clock in the morning. He would wake me up when the full moon was right. We never had a sexual relationship, but he was the light for me. So he was very important. And another person, that would be privately, he believed in me, or he believed in himself, I guess, being only 2 years older, but he was so much older in my head because he was so much more worldly, and he started bringing the world to me. Professionally, I guess it would be, my first teacher in Gestalt, Tony Jackson, here in Melbourne, who is a very kind. I experienced him as very kind, and he laughs about himself, which is really lovely. Greer White, who has retired now. She's Brisbane, a Gestalt therapist, a very wise woman who I was lucky enough to do my master's with before she did hang up her hat. And Margarita Lob from Italy. I also feel drawn to her calmness and kindness, and the way she approaches the ideas around Gestalt and what she has developed, and the way she speaks about the dance and the aesthetics. There's something, it's easy for me to hear with my artistic way of orientating myself in the world. It's very easy for me to connect to that. And Irving Yalom, I must say, has been an inspiration to me for 20 years. I always could understand Yalom. From the age of 20, I was interested in psychology. I was interested in the field of helping and healing, but I didn't quite know how to do it. And when I found Yalom and his books, they spoke to me on a level which was sort of made so much sense. And I thought, yeah, I know that. And but I didn't, of course. There's sort of this knowing of knowing.
Okay. So before I get into some of those Gestalty influences and how they come through your life, I want to ask a couple more questions about different parts of you as a person. And one of those is how you are experiencing your age or aging in general.
I am only aware of my age when I look in the mirror or when I see pictures of me. Then I kind of go, oh, who is that? And in a surprised sense, not in a shocked sense. My body, my heart feels not at all 62. I feel excited that I late in life started to understand myself and get to know myself so much more than what I have known myself when I was 40. And there is so much freedom around growing old, that having that sense, I am not going to grow old as a bitter, angry, complaining woman, which would definitely have been on the horizon for me and everybody else around me, would I not have done the amount of therapy I have done and done my training. And I really had a commitment and still have a commitment to know and understand what is there to be known and understood about myself. So my essence was so hurt from little onwards and so affected that it needed a commitment to some healing. And it was that commitment and willingness to step into that muddy river and wade through so much hardship and allowing that to be felt is now, I kind of go, wow, guys, all of you out there, I want to sort of like shout it from the trees to my son and to my daughter and my daughter-in-law and everybody who walks past the footpaths. Have you got a therapist yet? Have you started therapy? It's just so exciting. And so that is something which doesn't really come with age as much. With age, I think, come different things, but that I'm feeling really excited about. What comes with age, I can relate to when my mother used to say, I don't care about that anymore, it's not mine. And I can understand how she said that, but she said it with a little bit of, I have given up. I don't care anymore. That's not the case for me. I feel, no, it goes to that self-knowledge and self-learning. It's not mine, it's yours. And therefore, I don't need to know about that, or I don't need to get involved. And there is freedom around that, and love and compassion and empathy for the situation, for the other, and myself. I hope I do have years ahead of me of being physically active, because obviously the body is starting to go inwards and the body parts start aching or falling off, which, knock on wood, is not really happening as such yet. But there's the eyesight. There is the getting a little bit more tired, like I don't recover so quickly overnight. When I work in the garden for 6 hours, I can have one night's sleep and I'm ready to run. When you're 40 again the next day, not so anymore. That's less. How it will progress, I am not worried about it. I'm not afraid of growing old, except I do not wish to grow old without choices. And I hope that we proceed as a society here in Australia and in the world with assisted suicide, with assisted choice, that you want to end your life because you do not want to be a burden on other people. And I'm not held by religious beliefs that this is a sin. And there is hope that that might happen before we get, or I get too senile to make decisions. And then again, it might not happen. My mother just died 1 year ago, and she was 87, and I learned a lot about the process of dying. Even so, I was 2 countries or continents apart. I was able to sit with her daily with the iPad, literally almost till she took her last breath, when she was not present anymore the last 2 days.
Wow.
And watching her into the death, and her suffering seemed very little. But then again, she was very stoic, and she suffered in silence. It was very hard to actually realize when was their suffering. And I think when the suffering became so bad, she decided, that I had enough, and she left. I like to think that I am that strong-headed and stubborn, that I am able to make a decision of such to let go.
Personally, I value choice in that sense as well. So interesting. So another aspect of yourself that I'm curious about is how you experience and understand yourself in gender terms, or as a woman.
Well, That's an interesting question and very complex. And I think that also has got to do with age. My answer would definitely be different was I 20 years younger. The way I understand myself today, I am born as a woman into a very patriarchal society, in a family where my father would lie on the couch and hold his stomach after lunch, and my mother started the dishes and he would say, go and help your mother. And there was this fury in me, like that 7-year-old child, of throwing the kitchen towel back at him and say, why aren't you helping? And it was a very dangerous thing in a way to do in the early in the 60s, because we weren't a liberated family. We were very much dancing to the tune of the music of the time, which was the woman was in the house and the husband was under the hood of the car, and that was his domain. And so I very much internalized that. And I was very aware when I met my husband now, and I was by then already 26, and I met him here in Australia when I came as a backpacker, again, with nothing but 11 kilos and very little money. And when I met him and we lived together, I would think about cooking. You need to cook meat for a man because a man needs more protein than a woman. That was my rhetoric. And we would have meat only when my father was at home, which was every second weekend. We would have meat because he was a man, and then I had brothers and they always got the bigger piece of meat. And my mother would have the neck of a chicken, divide a chicken by 5, what the mother ends up eating, the neck and maybe the ass of the chicken. And because all the other good bits need to go to the husband first, then the older brother, then the younger brother, and then is me and her. So that part is, I had to constantly come to my awareness. And I guess why I didn't buy into it, because there was this rebel inside of me going, how dare you? Why are you different? But the psyche kept pushing me to behave in this this female way of being. I was lucky enough to give birth to a son and a daughter. And my daughter, now she's 29, she has brought over the last 10 years, I guess, or even longer, very much the fire, which I relate to, which keeps me on the toes, helps me educate myself, and also, of course, is a cause to this complicated mother-daughter relationship of allowing space and learning who we both are and accepting ourselves within who we both are. And I benefit greatly from her cohort, her thinking, her pain, because she has pain in the world she finds herself in. She's trying to make sense of Black Lives Matter, non-binary. What does it mean to be a woman and not make the man the bad element and in the world. So that for me is definitely been helpful, and without her, I think I would have had a harder time to catch up to where I am now with my reading, with my conversations, with my thinking, because we were able to push up against each other. And yeah, the children have been, both of them, they've been my educators.
They're
And
amazing
continue,
that way.
yeah, and continue to be.
So I'm wondering, this is the last of the more personal questions, but I think you've touched on it on different levels, but how would you say that you experience and understand privilege and power in your life?
Well, the way in our climate, the zeitgeist today, when we hear privilege, I think people who have conversations as I have with my daughter and my daughter's generation, they see privilege as white privilege. That's the first thing, I think, what comes up. And there is the definition, and I think that's the struggle, what sometimes I sense in my cohort of my friends and people I know who say, well, privilege to them is, I am poor, you are rich, I have, you don't, education, non-education. So that's one form of privilege. And then the privilege of power. What can I do? I'm a little nobody, and others are much more powerful than I. And when I hear privilege, I guess it goes to white privilege, because this is so in the language, and trying to find a language and educate myself around the questions to ask, how to speak about it, not to be afraid to fall over my own feet and have the foot in my mouth because I have said something wrong, so therefore not saying it at all. I have a clear understanding that I am privileged as a white woman in Australia, is totally no question asked, because I notice myself how I, as a white woman, when I drive in the car and I stop at the traffic light and I see a person who is of color, a male, that I have in the past found I'm locking my car. And that in itself shocked me so much, to realize those internal biases, that because I would never have acknowledged that I am racist, or would say I am not racist. I'm a very open, kind, loving person. And then I'm locking the door, and I can't go, well, where is that internal bias coming from? So years ago, that started for me, again, through these conversations with my daughter when she was in her late teens, that I'm doing that. So I became very vigilant of trying to catch myself in my daily go-abouts. How do I do that? Where does that show up? And what have I just done? And why, what provoked that? So I definitely feel I have white privilege. I also have, I understand the privilege in our Corona times now, which was so difficult for so many people. They lost jobs with the close downs. We haven't even seen the fallouts yet, because what will happen in 6 months, when a year when this is really coming to the force, the impact this does have around the world. And I feel privileged in that sense, that I am at the age I am at. I have worked very hard. I have built a life for myself. I have a beautiful house and garden. I have learned through my humble beginnings how to grow a vegetable garden. I can feed myself. I can weave my own clothes. I can make my own clothes. I have some sort of idea how to use power tools. I'm self-sufficient I'm privileged very much and feel sometimes guilty to say my life is so good, knowing how bad the life is over here for lots of young people, including my children and my grandchildren, who are living into a world where much of that is not there anymore. It's gone. It's a thing of the past. There's no continuation of that learning anymore, because we're so disconnected from nature, which is life, to our city living. You know, it's easy for me to transport the country into the city, but you cannot in a city situation. It's so much harder to actually realize, well, where does the water come from? You know, when I opened the tap, and from the supermarket, the milk cartons and all the rest of it. So that I consider myself also as privileged. So it's the privilege of the parents and the background I had, which at the time I hated with every fiber of my body and pushed back against and was ashamed of, has now become something very precious.
Okay. So how did your life and your story end up intersecting with Gestalt? Where did this cross? Where did it come in?
I think as when I look back over my life, all the things which were put in my path, they were put in, I saw them, I recognized them, I took them up. So there was no grand plan to it. There wasn't oh, now I'm going to save and then I will, or something. I just did it when I saw it. I recognized it. And the need and wish and longing to heal myself was disguised from the age of 20 to healing always others, to look after others, to do everything for others, not realizing that I needed to heal myself, and that had somewhere a root, that constant carer for other people. And then when I found I wanted to be a psychologist after fashion school, didn't quite know how to become that and how to do this. There was just a longing for that. And I ended up becoming a milliner, a person who makes hats. That's what I became. And I decided that that is the closest I would ever get to the brain with the hat. And it has sort of like had a truth, very much, because I realized there were all those metaphors. And I made hats the first 10 years of my life very much to be in vogue and to be respected and to be famous and to kind of be the best. That was sort of the wish. And then after that, my husband had a very bad accident, which resulted in paraplegia. My children were very small. And that threw us both into depression. My husband became almost suicidal. And my psyche needed to save itself. And the way it saved itself was through making. And as I realized that I felt better through the making, really, truly, my depression could be lifted through that. My teaching changed in the making. And I started not caring anymore what peers thought of me, what people learned, if the stitch was proper and everything was properly done. It was about the process, not the outcome. And that then started showing me that there's a therapeutic element to it. And that for many years I traveled around Australia and also many countries in the world, teaching, always using the therapeutic part of the making, the fabrics, the stiffness, the silkiness. Some need a structure, some don't. Some can stand on their own. Some need a structure for a little while and then they can stand on their own. How can you stiffen something? Does it fade in the light? Can you stand the light? Do you need to stay in the shade? And all those materials produce beautiful hats. The flowers, the flower making became the blooming. What is it like, the bud? What does it feel like if you are a bud? How does it relate to you as a human? When you make this bud, you have it here three-dimensionally. And what's the first leaf? It opens up. And what does the bud need? And what fabric? And how tight is a bud? And how loose is a bud? So it became, I could find a, to every feeling I experienced myself, I could see it in the needle, in the thread, in the stitch, in the blocking, in the shaping, in this, that some straws needed water, some need steam, some need nothing, some need a lot of glue, others do not need no glue. You ruin them with glue. So, and a friend of mine who did Gestalt training kept saying, oh, you know, you really should be doing this. This would be marvelous for you. And I had a shop at the time, and I said, there's no way I can take more on. It will break me, because I was already kind of moving on that very fine edge of when is too much, this constant field conditions. What I find with myself, there's so much growing in the field, and I know I could pick it all, and the learning of, well, you only have 2 vases, there's no point of picking all those flowers. Where are you going to put them inside? So it was that sense of and then I decided to sell the shop, and I decided, if I manage to sell the shop, then I will do the training. And I did. The shop sold, and we signed contract on a Friday, and on Monday I started the course. And that's what brought me then, not really realizing what Gestalt was about. It just sounded like it's something which would give me, it suited me, and it will give me, I was after a qualification which gave me a framework to hold my classes better, because I found that I took so much on. And when I came away from a tour of traveling, because I have a big red truck, I traveled sometimes 4, 5, 6 weeks, sometimes for long weekends. And when I came back, I felt I was so depressed because of the hardship, what I have found and seen, and that I didn't do enough. And it felt like I made no impact. And it felt like I'm driving in, I'm driving out. And it did not seem enough. And there was not enough self-care and understanding. How do I hold a group when they disclose? What does that mean? And how can I be supportive rather than opening someone up and then I don't know what to do with what they are bringing? And that was my longing for it. And I got so much more, of course, as a result.
What did you get? What did you find in Gestalt, and how did it affect you?
The main thing, how it affected me, I think that the Gestalt training is very experiential. It's very you are the most valuable tool there is in anything you do, and to fine tuning that tool, who is myself, and meaning I need to know, how do I cut? How can I repair? How can I stitch something back together? How can I stretch till, to know before it breaks? Window of tolerance. They are all hat making materials.
All of your metaphors are beautiful.
It's all in what I have already done for 30 years. Or I could hang my hat on in putting them together in the principles. I don't like jargons. Like I've never been very good in learning the language as such, because I wanted to express it in real terms, so whoever I speak to understands. So if I heard myself field, but when I said the field, I actually saw a field, the field of flowers. So when I say the field, that makes sort of, in a way, sense to people. But many other terms, bracketing and things like this, I tried not even to use, because I didn't want that to be a habitual way of speaking or having to make a difference. Now I'm speaking to a therapist, and now I'm speaking to a layman. It's that it's life. It's a, how can I be a Gestalt therapist, but be also a social act and maintain to be a social activist, which I was first. I think I was a social activist from the age of 7, where I became very aware of it that I was. And Gestalt training, I think, has helped me to not see it as that is my job. I'm doing this in the room. That is who I am. That's a part of who I am, and that I don't hope that I'm no different in the room than I'm outside of the room, and that I'm not supposed to preach in the room. Where what makes me think I can preach outside to my kids or to anybody else? So if I have those principles outside, then I live life. So that's what I think the training brought me. It also brought me that it doesn't matter in what people think about me. That constant having to deal and sit with that in the group awareness, the group training, the power of the group, the impact of a group, how I am impacted and how I impact others. That has been, I find they are wonderful things in the Gestalt training. And for me as a German speaker, I guess, once I cottoned on what Gestalt actually meant, like it's like you might laugh about this, but I came into so naive, I came so naive to Australia without a map. I had very little money, and I didn't know Australia had a 10-hour time difference to Europe at the time. I arrived in December, and it was hot, and I didn't realize that either. December hot and winter cold in Europe. So that's naive, no research. That's how I felt in Gestalt. Gestalt was, oh yeah, I think it has something to do with German. Oh, well, everything, psychotherapy and analysis is German. They all came out of Germany and Austria. So that was kind of my rhetoric without thinking too much about it. And then in the first year, one day when I was sitting there and they were talking about Gestalt and trying to understand what Gestalt is and trying to describe in English words, I kind of went, my God, it's Gestalt. And I know so well what that word means and how many meanings that has. And Gestalt 10, when then that was coined, only a few, and Gestalten, I do this daily, constantly, daily. I whenever my hand moves, I gestalt something. So it became an awareness, and a light bulb went on. It's in you. You don't need to find it somewhere out there and in the books. You just need to keep coming back, stay close to experience, stay close. What's happening inside, and how, and from there, arise out and let it
Mhm.
go, keep it sharp, dissolve it, whatever.
That is beautiful. I just love the way you lit up as you're describing that. So I'm wondering, do you feel like you're part of a Gestalt community? Does that mean anything?
Yes, I would like to think I am. And I am, I have to work for it. It doesn't just happen. It's like, brings me back to your first question, family values, number one. And it's like with the Gestalt community. If I do not work at it or for it, I'm not going to have one. It's just as simple. They're not coming looking for me and going, hello, where are you?
Mm-hmm.
And so I am trying, but my life is very full and very busy. And at the same time, I do have a longing to be in a community, meaning joining hopefully an international group who might be a book group or just meet and chat. I was thrilled to be able to talk to you because I consider there's now a little community. You are now one who is sort of belongs. Oh, I know this Gestaltist Gestalt therapist in Mexico. And then you know so many people now because you were interviewing. We have in Australia two major groups I can identify. There's the Melbourne Gestalt Institute, where I trained, and then there's the Brisbane Gestalt Institute, and then there's the international, what they call GANs. Mm-hmm. And I'm not actively involved to get on the committee because I'm not a committee person. Mm-hmm. So that would get me in, but doesn't rock my boat. I am trying, if there is a social get-togethers, I go, but the social get-togethers are very few and far in between. It seems like they are both businesses and they are promoting classes, and if you pay for a class, then you are in the community. If you don't, there's very little chance mm-hmm. of getting together. Yeah. So there's within me a yearning of, I just can start a get together. Just do, you've got a garden, just offer a Saturday, see who will come and get together in that way. So just hang with people, hang mm-hmm. out without, I'm not.
Just ask questions to strangers on the internet, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I think that's really interesting. I've noticed and struggled with that distinction between a community and a marketing strategy. And a community that is an actual sense of connection and like an experience that people get sold. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I like the way that you articulated that. I think that was interesting. Okay. And I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry. I am wondering though, what you do with this, because I get the sense that you are very busy doing a lot of different things, but I'm wondering what the essence of your work is and how Gestalt comes into that.
Well, the essence, I guess, is I do have a small practice in Melbourne. I have a purpose-built space in my garden where every element in the room has been carefully chosen, always in mind with how would or could a client experience that. It's almost like a glass box. You literally sit in the garden and there's a sense of no neighbors and you just look at vegetation and growth. And it gives, if you, as the clients I have are weekly and ongoing, they have a chance of seeing the seasons changing in the garden. And for me, my own personal therapy, that has been a very helpful way of doing therapy, because it's also how I orientate and how I see metaphors in nature. You can take the girl out of the country, but you can't take the country out of the girl. And I do think we as humans, even we say we are city people, but we are, the need for nature, soil and greenery is innate in us. It is connects to our nervous system. It pulsates us into calmness. And I have found that room does that. So I really enjoy the work, as humbling and scary it is at times. The sheer sense of responsibility I feel of what a therapist has to do, and I or not do, but and I think as a profession, I'm in awe of therapists who do this as a vocation, a lifetime, and pride themselves that they see 6, 7, and 8 clients a day. I do not know how this is possible, and I could not have done that if I would have come to therapy 30 years ago. I don't know how I would have maintained my self-care, how I would have survived it, or how I would have been able to stay present the way I can be present with only a few clients, because I really feel the aliveness in the client and in myself, because I give myself enough room in between to be alive again for the next person. If I have them with 10-minute breaks, 8 a day, how can I stay alive? I couldn't. So I'm in great awe. I don't know if awe is the right word, but I don't understand it. It's puzzling to me that this is even possible. Yeah. So, and then I do still a lot with art therapeutic ways, hat making and weaving. I run workshops online. I have gone over COVID, that has taught me a great deal to set up a film studio with a magnitude of cameras, which let me have different angles. And in every workshop I teach now, there are always the questions of providing space for the person who is listening to reflect on something. The metaphors which relate to our internal upheavals and challenges, and to normalize that even I, as I sit here with 62, with all the therapy, I still hurt and I am sad at times, and this wave of sadness comes over me where I think, yeah, but I thought I dealt with this. Yes,
it's back.
And it's back, and it's back because for many reasons. Am I tired? Have I done too much today? Have I had breakfast? Have I? And on it goes. Has somebody listened to me lately? So there's a reason. And what are the reasons? You know, the fact that you know how to make a hat and then you don't make one for 5 months. Do you think you're going to make that hat very easily? No, you need to practice your little fingers again and everything else what goes with it. So the same with our thought patterns. It's a daily, ongoing practice with mindfulness, with meditation, with stitching, the needle, and then it becomes muscle memory one day, and it won't take you long to come back again. You just need to close your eyes and breathe 4 times and you're back. But you need to start practicing that muscle.
Okay. Well, I'm really enjoying speaking with you. I don't want to end this, but I would like to ask you my general last question, which is, where are you going from here? What's next? And what do you think is next for Gestalt from where we are?
Also a big question. For me, what's next is that I will go downstairs and have breakfast. That I immediately know, but I know you don't mean it in that way.
But no, that's reassuring. I love speaking with Australians because I know that tomorrow will come if you're having breakfast.
Yes.
We make it to Sunday at least. We get to flip over.
Exactly. So I can take that burden off you.
Thank you.
And the sun has come up, and it was an amazing sunrise. And today is actually Anzac Day in Australia. And Anzac Day means the remembrance of the veterans of the First World War. And they were called the Anzacs when they came back. And there's, I think, might be only one person alive from that era. But it's the dawn on Anzac Day where people remember that. And for me, that was a reflection on how useless and insane wars are, and that how we go to Anzac Day and remember, but we fight wars at home, in our homes, with our neighbors across the fence, with our friends we don't speak to. And they're sort of those mini wars. So I think for me, that has brought today to the fourth again, that reflection. Where are my little wars I am fighting, and how can I put them to sleep and put the white flag up, be the one who holds the white flag? I mean, nothing big came to mind, but little things, were there. Even the war with the dog who doesn't do as I wish. Can I surrender to who she is? Otherwise, I will carry on with clients the way, mindfully, the way they come into my life, and trust that the ones I can deal with, who I can hold safely, will come. And the wisdom that I will always, not succumb to thinking that I'm God and I can deal with anyone, because I'm not. I will travel with the Hatmobile as long as I can drive safely, because we are talking 3,000, 5,000 kilometers of driving when I do those tours. Australia is a huge country. I am totally and utterly delighted to have a 6-month-old grandchild in my life who has been born with some challenges, physical challenges, not mental, which is opening another way for me to learn how to develop a language, to be really aiding her as she grows. And also practicing that language around that she is a little human in this world, and the whole awareness, what we spoke around it. How can that human be supported around what does it mean to be female, have a language of non-binary, not putting them into a box of, I don't even know, just because she was assigned female, does that really mean she is, and how will that human develop? So that I'm excited about, because I am also I feel like I'm baby steps. Charlie's not quite crawling, but I am kind of walking, but sort of wobbling ahead of that little person. a few steps. So we will grow together, and I'm excited about that. And for Gestalt, where is Gestalt going? Well, I think there's one side of me says, Waltraud, you are far too green and wet still behind the ears in your training, understanding what is actually gone before you. Like, I know what's gone before in books, but the true experience, as so many women and men before me have experienced it, I am really one who is standing on those shoulders, and I am just seeing, they are helping me see bits, but I feel I'm being held up in the back there, and I'm trying to see what I'm hearing. The Gestalt therapy is alive and well here in Australia, in Melbourne. The courses are full. I do feel Australia is a bit of a young child who is depending on what comes from overseas, from America and from Europe, as it used to be with fashion, as it used to be with hats. It was always what's over there is more interesting, and it's better quality, and it's what we want. And Australia hasn't, what I've observed has not been a great deal doing their own thing and being brave to kind of go, that's what we think, and we're going to take that out. There's this tall poppy syndrome, what Australia has got in fashion, in sports. If you become too trying to sort of like go, I know, they cut you down. And they don't do it necessarily because they don't like you. They kind of go, look, we're all the same here. We are the same. We sort of appear to be the same, but we are not the same. And I'm wondering if somehow that the way is we have very few people who travel in Australia overseas, but we have lots of Americans coming to do lectures and to come to seminars. We have from Europe people coming. So who is having the Australians? And I do think we do have some marvelous intellectual Gestalt therapists who have an academic brain, which I don't, by the way. And having, not just I'm saying this, maybe I do. I just haven't given myself a chance.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
there's definitely some depth and some dimension to your thought process for sure.
Yeah. Yes. And that's what I think I would like to see. The celebration, the celebration of Gestalt therapy, men and women here from Australia, and that I'm not quite sure how that can happen, or if they want that, or why that doesn't happen. I don't know.
I have a feeling that if you start inviting them to your garden, you may start something.
You never know. You never know.
Mm-hmm.
And I will let you know when that will happen. You can be assured. Now,
at least take your little camera so I can see your garden. I would love to. I think that sounds.
I can do that too.
I think that sounds promising. And I do agree with very much with what you said. I think the same often from the Mexican perspective is I see the trade going one way. And it almost feels colonial if you follow the trade routes with the academic ideas. And it's not always mutual. And the coming back over is not always welcome. So.
And I wonder and think about that internal bias, what maybe so many Australians still are holding themselves, and that colonism of that it doesn't allow us. It's like me having been so hampered by my Nazi past. It has taken so many years to actually acknowledge it, embrace it, and then shed it. That doesn't mean that I need to adhere and act upon that. And somehow that seems to be still the case with when you look at Anzac Day, that very important day to so many people. I wonder how many do actually reflect also on that. Why did they go to war in the first place? For the English, not for Australia. You know, it's the colony was told to go.
Yeah. Yes, I think we could have a whole other conversation about that.
Yes,
I would love
indeed.
to one day. But is there anything else you would add to this for now? Or is it okay for us to leave this here?
I think maybe what I would like to add is maybe, who knows, it might be helpful to someone, but it certainly would have been helpful to me, and is now helpful that I have this realization that it has taken me a very long time to find a way to merge my incredible talent I have for the arts and the teaching and the making and the resourcefulness, and how am I a Gestalt therapist, and am I a milliner, or am I a Gestalt therapist? So that tension for me was really difficult to hold, and it took me a while to realize that it doesn't have to be one or the other, that it is the very fact that I have those two hands, literally, just as I'm watching myself doing this now. It is the two hands which has made me and allowed me, and seems to carry on allowing me, to really create something, because it would so much be harder to do this with one hand, whatever it is. I cannot hold the hat, and stitch it with one hand. So, and that was a process. And I think I probably like to finish on that the process, if enough willingness and courage, I guess, to stay with that insecurity and uncertainty, which has paid off for me in everything in life, to not run away from because of fear or judgment or displaced judgment, that it integrates eventually.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. It brings me right back to Joseph Zinker's creative process. Just right there.
Right. There we go.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure to meet you, and I will stop this here then.
Thank you.